Hey gang, welcome to my cabin. We are in the north woods, the far north woods of Wisconsin. I'm about 50 miles south of Lake Superior. And I'm going to tell you a little story tonight, a true story that happened to us. I'm going to say it's almost 20 years ago. Not at this place, but the place we used to own down in a place called Minocqua, Wisconsin. Let's take a walk outside. I've got a fire going for us, and let's go down to the bonfire and I'll tell you the story down there. I think you'll like it. It's kind of complex, but let's go down there and see how the fire's doing. Now, I'm gonna grab my little headlight here because it gets awfully dark out there. We've got a lot of land here and we're surrounded by national forest. There's nobody around. So what I can do is guarantee you that it's going to be very quiet. Very, very quiet, which is perfect. And what I also love up here is in the North Woods, we're far from any city. So not only the quiet, but the stars. I'm going to turn the flashlight on, my headlight, because I can see, but I'm sure this camera is not going to be able to see. But as you can see, we're on a lake. So there's the fire. I think we can make our way now without the light. And as I look up in the sky, I can see, well, we've got a few clouds. Maybe we'll do this again on another story sometime on a clear night. But I can just barely see Jupiter up there. So let's head for the fire. As we leave the cabin. Now, when I was here making the fire about a half hour ago, it was just getting going, and let's put this down here, and I was just about to leave to go in the house. I'm going to stoke this a little bit. And I heard a very strange sound. Now, I'm not trying to dramatize, but of course there's a lot of sounds here in the woods. No big deal, right? All kinds of animals, but what was strange about it was it was something like between a wolf and an owl. Now we have wolves here. We have gray wolves, okay? And they're very afraid of humans. They stay way far away from us. And I know what their call is. In fact, here at this place across the lake, I know how to call them. Once in a great while, you know, if you get really late and get far out there, they will call back. Now, we have gray wolves here, but as you know, I've spent 15 years, 20 years in the Arctic. So I know an Arctic wolf howl. I know Ontario, flying my de Havilland beaver there many years ago on Rainy Lake. I know what a timber wolf sounds like. And I know what a gray wolf sounds like. And this sound that I heard about 100 yards, on our land back here, back in this direction. It was between an owl and a wolf. I've never heard anything like it. Now, a wolf sound. Basically, it's a high, drawn out, and like it's kind of like, oh. The ducks are listening. So, but this was not that. That was not the sound of a wolf, but it was not, woo, woo. Great horned owl, we have great horn. We got all kinds of owls here, but maybe we'll hear it. But it was, you can never predict. You can never predict. I mean, when a girl was killed in where, that singer, by a pack of coyotes, so I always carry. I usually don't carry here at the fire, but I am right now because it was really pretty strange. So I'm gonna put this camera down here, see if we can situate this so you guys can see. I'm gonna throw a couple more logs on the fire. There. So here we are. Now, the story that I'm going to tell you, has to do with an exorcism, a real exorcism, not with a priest, with the family. And how can you do an exorcism with a family? Well, my wife is from Ecuador, the whole family's there, and they're down there, medicine, witch doctors, there's they have a lot of knowledge and a lot of wisdom. Not like us up here, not like us Germans, Swedish. But anyway, let me start to give you a little background on a kind of frame where we're at here. We are in the North Woods. This is the land of the Chippewa, and there's a tie-in here to the First Nation. And the tribe that we have here, I'm going back to Minocqua. I'm way north of Minocqua right now, but if you go down to the Minocqua area, it's the Lac de Flambeau clan, if you will, tribe. And if you go all the way back, it's the land of the Chippewa. And if you go way back to north of here onto Lake Superior, you heard of Madeline Island. There were many clans, many centuries ago, and they gathered there. And of course, they were always trying to avoid more aggressive tribes. And it was there that some of the clans, one in particular, came to the Minocqua area, and they settled there on this lake called, it's basically the flowage. It's kind of a flowage. So we get the turtle flowage, but it's a chain of lakes, but it is fed by a river system. But anyway, so they settled there, and the leader basically found it by standing on a big rock. He looked across the lake, and he said, as long as this rock is here, so we will be here. In other words, the First Nation, those people that were here before all the settlers for maybe 10,000 years, maybe more, would always respect the land, and the land itself, the spirits were part of the earth, part of the air, part of the animals. These all have huge meanings. And I did sweat lodge with the Lakota on Pine Ridge, the rocks that are heated, the grandfathers. So everything has meaning and has spiritual tie-in. We are part of that. That is part of us. So it's important to note that the people here, the Lac de Flambeau, the Lake of the Torches, was named such that they were on canoes at night spearing the walleye because of the eyes. They could see the eyes. So you'd look on the lake at night and you see all the torches. So Lake of the Torches. And these are the Ojibwe people, this whole area. And to the west were, among others, were the Dakotas. And to the east, the Iroquois. And that's just to name a few conflicting tribes, bands, clans. So they settled there, and they settled actually on a lake, a chain of lakes where we had our place. We were on a lake called Fence Lake, like a fence, Fence. And we were in a bay called Mars Bay on the south end. Yes, it's the Mars Candy family owned this peninsula and this whole bunch of land in that bay and named it, still named Mars Bay. There's Johnson Point, Johnson Wax, some big money people were there. Well, we had a fairly modest place, but the unique thing about our place was that it was the first place that was built, or the second, I'm not sure which, back in the early 1900s, before people really were coming up here. We were the first people on that lake, and it was a log cabin. And when we owned it, it was called Kodiak Lodge. And those of you who are up here and on Highway F on Fence Lake, you'll probably remember Kodiak Lodge. It's gone now, and there's a reason it's gone. We're going to talk about it. So we lived there, and we had a couple of acres. We had some land, some good frontage space. Nothing like this where, I don't like to hear anything. I want to be in the wild. And we were getting along, and family, the kids were young. And we had some strange occurrences happening. Now, what we found out later, there's a legend of Rose Wounded Feather. There was a legend of her with the Ojibwe chief's daughter. There was a parlay with the Dakota centuries ago. The story's been handed down, and she fell in love with the Dakota chief's son, but they couldn't be married. They couldn't be together. So he came one night to her down the chain to, they say, Mars Bay, where we were. And there was others that followed him that forcibly took him back. The Dakota Braves, they were sent out because the father knew what he was doing. And he had some moments with her there, and he promised he would be back. And she waited for him for a week, for a month. She would always go to the bay and stand by the water, waiting for his canoe to come back. And he never came back. And she died there eventually. And they say you can hear her in the wind, you can hear her cries. And I can say it's been some spooky nights, but I'm going to tell you right off, what we didn't know is where our house was situated. Our cabin that was built way back when was, I believe, over some Indian burial grounds. So this would explain possibly some of the events. And again, this ties into all the Native American history here in a very tenuous way. So the first thing that started happening in our place, the kids were growing up, and we were just, strange noises. It was a one-story cabin. It was so old, but it had that really character. And in the middle of the house, we had the living room and the kitchen, and in the middle of the house there was what we called the bunk room. We had 3 bunk beds in there, so 6 kids. But weird, in the middle of the floor there was a hatch door right in the middle going down to the cellar. And the kids would say they would hear strange noises down there and things. And of course, come on. And we never made a big deal about it. And then one day, my son, Danny, was in the bathroom, and there's a big window. As you sit down to go to the bathroom, there's a big window, like right in front. It's up higher, but you're staring off into a window into darkness. And all of a sudden there was like an image, like a face. So he was always afraid to go in there. And then in the bunk room, things continued. And then we had a family member. I'm not going to say who, but there was some extended family that we believe was in that bunk room, and there was a possession. And I'm not going to go into too much of the detail, but a lot of animals here, a lot of noises, but that's typical. You know, the animals are moving at night. But it would result in the sisters. My wife, she has 3 sisters. Her mother, Mamacita, and she knows the old ways, and they ended up on the kitchen floor holding him down, performing an exorcism, an Ecuadorian exorcism. I didn't witness that, but it was in the middle of the night, and I thought I heard some stuff, but you know, on the other side of the cabin, nobody wanted to wake anybody and make it worse. So they prayed and they went through a ritual, and of course, it got taken care of. And I'm gonna put another couple of logs on the fire here. So, okay, a few years pass and we're still having some of these strange events happening. There. And I'm kind of getting, you know, I don't know about this place. You know, it's a really cool place, but now the kids are kind of getting scared, and how old were they? Well, they were like 8, 10, 12. And we had our daughter, who was passed on, Milena. I think she was about 15, I'm going to say. And she had invited up a boy. His name was Lazo. Now, I don't remember much about him. I mean, this is going back almost 20 years. He was a nice kid. And he was so excited because off our pier there, we had a fish crib underwater. And it was an old pier, actually, that was there. And the fish you could just go to the pier, and every cast you could catch a bass or caught all sorts of stuff. So he wanted to catch a walleye. And that was his big dream. And he never even went fishing before. So, make a long story short, he went out. That day, he caught a walleye. We never caught the walleye. We caught bass and others, so we never caught a walleye. They're more deeper water. I mean, the water there is only like 5 feet deep, crystal clear. You know, with the sand, you could see the fish. So it wasn't at night. Usually he'll catch it. So anyway, all excited. I mean, it was the best day of his life. We had dinner, you know, beer butt chicken on the Weber. We had, you know, all the good stuff, eating outside, and they had the bonfire. It was a great experience. And this Lazo was just taking it all in. He was a city boy. He never really experienced this. And he was just on a super high. It was all good. So we went to bed and we went to sleep. And apparently, now I didn't hear about this until the next day, but that bunk room again. So Milena was in, Danny and Nathan weren't there, but it was Milena in one bed, and then Lazo in a bed, and then Chrissy was in another bed, who's our niece. And it was 2 a.m, and this was told to me. I slept right through it all, and I'm probably glad I did. But Milena just came into, her mom was in the other room, and went to her and just said, "Mom, something's," not her mom, Chrissy's mom, Auntie Norma, and said, "Something's wrong with Lazo, something's wrong with Lazo." So they, you know, went back in the room, I guess, and they had to turn the lights on, and he was in the bed thrashing around. And he flew out of the bed, he's on the floor, and they're like, "What is going on?" And they looked at his eyes, and his eyes were dilated. He said his eyes were black. Now, he had like medium brown eyes, but his eyes were just black, like big black eyeballs. And he's thrashing around on the floor, they said they knew immediately it was a possession. So they started to pray, and Milena was holding his legs down, and he was foaming at the mouth. He was speaking in not languages, but he just had this guttural, half female, half male. That's how they described it. Half male, half female, just this really weird voice, and saying all kinds of nasty, weird stuff. It wasn't even as like swearing, it was just weird. They were holding him down. I just remember they said Milena had his legs, and they're holding his shoulders, his hands, and they're saying, "I believe in the Lord our Savior." And that was what they would say. "I believe," and they were like, say it. "I believe in the Lord our Savior." And finally he screamed out, "I believe in the Lord our Savior." And it stopped. It just stopped suddenly. He looked and he said, "Why am I on the floor?" He had no memory of what happened. He was all confused. He was all sweaty. He knew something weird had happened. So that event happened. Like I said, we don't know. I'm not saying it was the devil. I'm not saying, that wasn't particularly an exorcism. The prior one was. They followed the ritual, a whole ritual in the kitchen floor. But yeah, the next day he was back to himself, and we just went on with everything. But that's when I decided we're going to sell this place. That really freaked us out. So we sold the place, and we come to find out later now on the one corner of the property is actually near the street. And back in those days I would mow the lawn on a sitting tractor, and I would go at the edge there in the trees, and there was and there was always mounds in there, and I always thought these mounds were, is that where the prior people, is that where they dumped the lawn refuse, like the clippings and stuff? And I found out no, and we come to find out those were Indian burial. Now, we never messed with it, but who knows, that whole area could have been Indian burial grounds. And that house is gone. The new owners came, and that thing is gone. I don't know what happened. They have a beautiful home there now, more modern, but it's interesting. Within a year, I flew over with my plane. I would always fly in low and kind of buzz it and the memories, and I flew in, and it was just a sand lot. It was clean, it was gone. And then another year later, that was a couple years later, I think. So anyway, I just thought I'd share that story with you here at the bonfire on this beautiful night. You can see there's no wind, but I want you to look up the flames. The heat's rising. And you can see the leaves moving from the heat. It's a beautiful place here, a nice canopy of trees. We're on the edge of the lake. So thanks for sharing this evening with me, and if you like this, we'll do this again. I've got some more stories. All right, see you later.